I'll do that now.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna get streaming to Facebook.
Well, good thing I'm not in charge of that. So
Yeah, it's just I
enjoy,
don't want to
Corey.
stream it to my personal one.
Oh,
Let's see if I can put it on.
well, all I know is that my face is burning right now because I got sunburned. So that's that's a theme for me today.
Shoot, well, we've been having great weather here in Utah, and I cannot
Awesome.
blame you.
Yeah,
All right.
I didn't really plan on getting a tan today. I thought I'm just gonna quickly talk to my neighbor, and then it turned out to be like a 3 hour talk. And I didn't put sunscreen, none of that. So my bad. My bad.
No worries. Okay, so I think everything is
Then
working.
I think so
I
too.
am a computer guy, so you are in good hands. I do see recording. I do see live on Facebook. I did make sure it went to our group
Perfect.
and did not go to all my friends and family that would be figuring like, what the heck is Corey broadcasting? So it's all in the right places, I think. So because not a lot of people know I do this podcast with you guys, so I'm kind of a secretive guy that way.
Well, I don't know how. I mean, it's on several Facebook groups, and you've been on the podcast yourself. So I don't know how it would be secret.
Yeah, well, I don't post anything on my personal Facebook, or my Facebook feed. So I do most of my stuff like with the single stuff. I stick with the group. I stay within the group. So
Me too. So
all right, so Scott, welcome to our Flameless podcast here. We got you in the hot seat. We're really grateful to have you here. We're grateful that you volunteered to come and we get to know you a little bit. And so tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from?
Yeah,
for
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm Scott. I'm probably one of the youngest individuals that, from what I've seen, has been presenting here. I'm 28 years old. I am a Utah native through and through. Grew up in Layton, Utah. Served my mission and graduated from BYU. Somehow got it done in the 4 years that all colleges say you can get a bachelor's degree in. I think it mostly helped because
it's
because
doable.
yeah, I wasn't married.
But
What was that?
I mean, the 4 year, it's doable, but it's not the easiest. So kudos to that.
Oh, thanks. I had to go into my academic advisor several times to make sure, and they kept adding stuff, it seemed like.
Awesome.
Well, cool. So where'd you serve your mission?
I served my mission in Columbus, Ohio.
Ooh,
so
nice.
It covered this center and south part. Does not have Kirtland or the other traditional church history sites, but they do have a temple that we own and operate in Columbus,
nice.
not Kirtland. We don't have that again yet.
Awesome.
Not yet. Soon we'll have it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm seeing Go Buckeyes. Yes. A quick aside on that. I'm sure everyone who served a mission has had some form of a rule book. We called it the little white Bible.
Yeah, we did too.
And when I was like first into the area, I think I started around Dayton, one of the suburbs around there. They said, okay, so this section we're gonna go over in the rules is, about the local customs and whatnot. So we need you to pull out your pen and write this down. It says, respect the culture, go Buckeyes, customs, go Buckeyes, and religious beliefs, go Buckeyes, of the people in your area. It's very important.
That's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, we all had a white Bible too. So I served a long time ago. I served in 1988 through 90, and we had the same booklet. And it was funny because we had some fun reading it. One of the things that you like to do when we read it is one of the things that we like to do when we're reading it is we like to figure out like why was that rule created?
Oh,
Did you ever do
good
that? Like you read
question.
through the rules, like why was it created?
There were some that seemed pretty self-evident, like don't operate, heavy machinery or,
Yeah, exactly.
don't
Like a
have kids.
forklift
And it's
or
like
a backhoe.
somebody somewhere did something unbelievably stupid that should be
Yeah.
self-evident, but is not.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we used to do that. So we would read the rule and we're like, oh my gosh, it says we can't ride on ATVs. So we were trying to go in and try to figure out like, did some missionaries go out there and run on ATVs and get caught? And then they're like, we got to create a rule.
Was there a rule that you can't eat like street food if you're assigned outside the United States or kind of like country?
I don't think there's that. I've had missionaries. I don't know how they would have survived if they couldn't have done that. I mean, that's just how you eat food. You go to Taiwan. It's so cheap.
Yeah.
They in some places maybe they would say that by your region.
Yeah. I didn't serve my mission, so I'm learning a lot about the White Book, but I've heard some of the rules, so that's pretty cool.
A lot of the times people, just as a last note for that, a lot of times they'll throw stuff in as if it's religion or whatnot, like missionaries can't go swimming. It's like, oh, Satan controls the water and all that. It's like, no, some missionary did something stupid and like did a belly flop or almost broke his neck on the diving board.
Yeah,
and it's
that's
just
what it really is.
better safe than sorry in this case.
Yeah, because missionaries go in the ocean. My dad got baptized about 2 months before I got off my mission. And he got baptized in the ocean. So the elders went into the water, into the ocean, and baptized my dad in the ocean because he wanted to get baptized in the ocean. So obviously it's not any of that other crazy cultural commandment stuff where they make up things like the devil controls the water. I've heard that one too, but yeah, there's a lot of strange, like people don't know, like what, so they try to come up with reasons why they like, well, we don't do this. And then what, oh, well, we don't drink coffee and tea. Well, that's because of caffeine. No, it never was that. Like the prophet didn't sit in a room and go, hey, there's this weird chemical. It's something called caffeine. I don't know what it is. The Lord said caffeine. I don't know what it is, but just don't drink it. It's like that never happened. So, but of course we apply like after the fact. Oh, this must be the reason why. So it's kind of funny because chocolate's got caffeine. And so if that was the case, we would not be able to eat chocolate, and that would not be fun. That's like my favorite thing.
Well, I've seen some baptism, in the ocean when I went to BYU Hawaii. That's kind of like my mission right there for 4 years. So we have our own rules, but I thought it was pretty cool that you're surrounded by the ocean and but there's a certain place that they usually, it's a spot, and that's where they usually hold the baptism, so it's not just like anywhere at the beach. So I thought it was, and I've witnessed some of it, so I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
So were you an English speaking, Spanish speaking?
I was. There was some Spanish speaking around Cincinnati.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
perfectly English speaking.
Yeah, my mission had like 5 languages, like 4 or 5 languages. We had like Vietnamese and Cambodian and Spanish, and some of the Asian languages. The elders covered the entire mission, so they all had cars and they had extra miles on their cars, and they would go all over the place to teach. I think we even had Laotian in my mission, so it was pretty amazing. But yeah. Well, cool. So what'd you major in college?
Right. So I originally was gonna do the animation program at BYU, but I took my first CS class at BYU and got hooked instantly.
Yeah.
The program was really, really good and helpful for helping me. Not only the coursework was good, but also helped focus on, hey, join an extracurricular club. Here's how to do a resume. Here's how to, go to a job fair. Here's how to, get other marketable skills outside of your projects. So that, I think the experience plus, it was in a gospel atmosphere, really helped out.
Oh, okay.
That's cool. Like having worked in HR, there's a lot of skills that I always tell like staff to, to enhance not just the job that they do, but any transferable skills, because it's always helpful when you're looking for a job that employers will definitely take into account, not just what you're focused on. And so I think so that's cool. So the more you can put skills on your resume, the better.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, Corey can probably speak to this as well. If you're in any kind of field in not just programming, but IT or whatnot, long gone are the days where you can just hire a programmer and just have them work and slide a pizza under the door. Most of the time, you work on something so niche that it requires you to be involved with your manager and your customers and work together on a team and have a lot of good people skills.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to be a project manager. You've got to be a good salesman. You have to have
Be an
good customer service
accountant.
skills. Well, because they're going to come to
You
you
got
and
to know
say,
an account.
and it's almost like when if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, can you move the couch over to that side of the room?" And then after you spend your time moving it, then they go, "It doesn't quite look right. Can you move it back?" And sometimes that happens to coders because they're like, "Hey, can you do this thing in the code?" And then you do it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I don't quite like that. Could you like go put it back and then maybe change it another way?" And then you do that, and yeah. So it could be you have to kind of have patience. You can't be, gone are the old days where you had like Office Space, the movie, where he had people skills. Like he had he would get the faxes and he would give the fax to the engineers because the engineers didn't have people skills in the movie
Yeah.
Office. That was kind of funny, but yeah, gone are those days where you have like middle managers
Oh
kind of
my gosh.
intercepting computer programmers.
People skills in the IT world definitely very handy. I was the HR liaison for when I work at the University of Utah for the IT department, and it's interesting to see the personality of like each managers and the staff and how they interact. There are some that are few here and there that are awkward, but there's also other that are just so outspoken and very people person. So that was it's not I can't generalize now. I think more so it evolved in the IT world that it's needed. You get to talk to people.
That's true. That
Yeah.
is so true. Yeah, so I was in the IT world for a long time. So
Mhm.
I started in 96 and then
Okay.
kind of worked my way through, like the very beginnings of like the World Wide Web. And then
Mhm.
most people were just trying to get internet into their businesses and their companies. And so we started coming out of the dial-up world and coming into like the DSL world. And then later we got into more, we had some companies would lease lines and we'd have to put the lease lines in and get them all networked. And so I was more like a network engineer. I wasn't really a coder. And then, so I did that for like about 10 years before I did my current job, which, the IT world kind of helped me get my current job because,
Yeah.
they were looking for computer people and needed people with backgrounds like that. So, but it's an ongoing thing. I mean, it's constantly changing. And I heard somebody gave me advice a long time ago that said you have to spend about 20% of your time, 20% of your time each week learning something new to stay current. And if you don't do that, you get behind really fast in the IT world. Like it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And so I told my sons, I'm like, look, your dad's still learning stuff. I mean, at my age, I'm still getting certifications, I'm still taking classes. And now the big thing is cybersecurity. So now I'm going back and getting certifications and all the knowledge I have about computers, how to secure them, how to look for threats, how to do threat hunting. And then when you find it, how do you mitigate it and solve it and triage it and then, repair the systems and then figure out how to not let it happen again. So there's a lot of learning now in a whole new realm nowadays. And so,
Right.
yeah, you're
I
constantly
learned
learning.
yeah,
I don't
I
know about you,
learned
Scott. Are you
how
constantly learning
to
new stuff?
hire. I learned how to hire and delegate the IT stuff to the IT people. Since I've mentioned this in the previous podcast, I failed my programming classes. So it wasn't for me. I passed it eventually, but it was an interesting journey to be in the IT world. But it's been very helpful when I got hired in HR, and just the knowledge about networking and coding and programming really helps with, with my recruitment and whatnot. But yeah, I learned how to delegate. So that's the ongoing process for me.
There you go. Learn how to delegate.
Awesome.
It's a good skill in the church as well.
It is.
So what is your program of choice? What's your coding skill set?
When I was going through school, they heavily emphasized Java.
Okay.
We did kind of learn C++, C# as well. But yeah, the foundation of what I've learned has been on Java. And then as that has gone on, either jobs through college or internships or thereafter, were a lot more front-end based, HTML, Angular, CSS, name your pick.
Nice. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've gone back and learned. I think last year during COVID, when we were on lockdown, I took an online Python class because I'm like, I got to learn some scripting languages because it makes you
There you go.
create your own scripts and you make your job a little easier.
Mhm.
So I went to Georgia Institute of Technology and took a couple of Python classes, like Python 1 and 2. And so that kind of gave me a little bit of knowledge of programming, at least to understand structures and variables and all that kind of stuff that goes on in programming. So very helpful.
I've been learning Spanish. Me llamo Cristina Peterson. So it's it's the extent of my Spanish, but during the entire COVID, I'm still not fluent. I can speak Tagalog, but there's a lot of similar words that they use in Spanish. Since we're talking about language anyway and learning about it, it's hard to translate a Spanish word to like English or Tagalog because you're finding similarities. So that's where I'm at during COVID when it comes to languages.
Nice.
Yeah,
multiple languages that happens. When I was I picked up Portuguese after my mission. I was Spanish speaking Houston, and then I picked up Portuguese after, and then every once in a while when I have to switch back to Portuguese, Spanish gets in the way all the time. And even the people who speak Portuguese
And they're so similar too. It's gotta be confusing.
Oh my gosh, it's like 70%. It's like 70% familiar. It's like I would say 70% of the verbs are the same almost. And a lot of the structure and a lot of the sentences are very similar, like 70%. And you catch yourself using Spanish words. And then a lot of times they'll be like, oh, Corey, that's a Spanish word. We don't say it like that.
So they understand what you're talking about, though.
Exactly. I'm like, you're just lucky I'm communicating with you.
I know.
We don't need an interpreter, so cut me a break.
Yeah, I work at the San Diego Food Bank, and sometimes I would get calls that are in Spanish, and I would be like listening, and I couldn't understand a word. I would catch a phrase here and there, and then I would just jump in like asistencia de comida, and then it's like sí, and so it's like food assistance. So I kind of like just jump into their question mainly for anybody calling the food bank and just go from there. And then Google Translate is amazing. I'd be like typing up and then I'll be speaking in Spanish fluently.
Just reading the translate. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very good.
Awesome.
So Scott, any marriages, so some people say not married yet. So I assume that you've been married before at 28?
Mm-mm. No, I haven't. Did a lot of dating during school and then, some amount thereafter, but no, never married.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I figured at 28, probably not yet. So I'm going to date myself again.
Self-love.
I have a 28-year-old son too. So my son's 28
oh, no way.
and I got a 24-year-old son. So yeah. And they're not married either. So don't worry. You're in good company.
Well, I have an 11-year-old and I told him you can't have a girlfriend until you're 30. So maybe that's just me as a mom.
Yeah, let's see as a mom.
And I'm pretty sure the dads out there, I'm like, nah, that's not going to happen.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll see. We'll see.
So what
How
is
about
your
dating?
Go
Come
for
again?
it.
How about dating? How's dating in Utah?
So I live currently in Saratoga Springs. I'm renting a room from one of my college roommates actually
Okay.
had the house built. Um, so okay, so what I would say is it's a lot more chill and relaxed dating in Utah when you're not like in school, or for me, like when I was in BYU. I say that because it was so much more of a, I don't know, it was so much more prevalent on your mind. You know, you're with a YSA ward that's a lot older, so the leadership are, mentioning it a lot more. It's like, get out and date, make it a priority. Sure, classes are busy. And then you go on campus, and it doesn't matter how hard you're working, there's some kid who's working a 40-hour a week job, whose wife's having a baby and is the elders quorum president. There's always somebody who's just doing better, so that you're always just constantly in an environment where it's so hard to not to compare yourself to somebody who seems to be doing a lot better. But since I have moved out of Provo, I've kind of lived in Utah, lived in Saratoga Springs and whatnot, and the ages of people in YSA wards are a little bit older. It's a lot more chill, a lot more understanding of, hey, yeah, the YSA wards exist so you can date, but we are here for, it is a social structure. We're here, to help each other out. When, even before COVID, we were trying to make sure that, everyone felt included. And during COVID, there's still an emphasis on having some form of contact, be it through, the Facebook groups or something else. And I've been in the ward that I'm in right now is a little bit, I've only been here for about maybe like 2 months and whatnot. And they still seem to be doing a lot of that as well. They're trying to get their ward missionary program kind of back up. It kind of died out for a little bit, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this whole
So it's
COVID
a
thing
lot
is,
more chill now.
yeah. Yeah,
With date,
damper on everything. This whole COVID thing put a damper on the dating scene.
it did for sure. So as part of that, this may lead into kind of the story and stuff we have to share later, but as part of some of the, kind of trying to get out there and date and like try different things, one was find a Facebook group. I think was through like LDS singles or whatnot. And on there was a link to one of your guys' podcasts. And I'd watched the first episode. I was like, oh wow, this is, I really like what they're doing here. And then at the end, they're like, hey, submit an application if there's a topic that you would like to talk about. And the topic that I want to talk about, I was like, I had a strong feeling of this is something that I am working on, but I also think is very pertinent to basically everybody in the church or otherwise, and it's something I think like I should share. So I entered in information and applied, and I've been talking to whoever manages the Facebook page, slowly but surely, and here we are.
Awesome. Yeah, Celeste was pretty excited that you wanted to come on, and I'm sure she told me her and Everett were really eager to watch this after it's all said and done, because they're really interested in your story. So that's awesome. So you've been dating, but any no magic, no sparks with anybody yet?
Spark flies.
As of recently, no, not right yet. But when we get into kind of the topic I want to share, that there was somebody who I was kind of pretty seriously dating, whatnot.
Sure, we'll get to
But
that
for right
soon.
now, using dating apps and Facebook pages during COVID, not really anything yet.
So what's your dating app of choice?
Mutual.
Does it work pretty good for you?
Yeah, I mean, because the main user base is in Utah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, there's other ones, Bumble, you know, girls message first. Tinder's not a complete dumpster fire anymore. I think they cracked down on it.
Yeah, it was a
Hinge
lot
is a
of
pretty
those
nice one as
craziness.
well.
Yeah, I had a buddy. So I was in Mexico City for work, and a non-member friend of mine, co-worker of mine. So single guy, 32, and he was using Tinder like crazy down there. But he told me some horror stories. Like, yeah, he said you got to be careful. There's a lot of prostitution that was going on. But this is a few years back, so it's good to hear that they've cracked down. But he said he had a few that he had like, wow, she's really hot, and then he would swipe right, and then they make a connection. And then, of course, the girl who's a working girl is probably swiping right on everybody in town.
Mhm.
And then she had a connection with him, and then they started chatting. And then she's like, well, I'm a professional, right? And he's like, unmatched.
Oh, that's the code. Like, I'm a professional. So,
Yeah. It was kind of
Uh,
like, yeah.
there's other
oh,
Yeah,
things,
we
this
but
learn
date
things
is
every
going
day.
to
You're not
cost
just an
you.
accountant anymore.
Yeah, this date is going to cost you. Yeah. So well, it's good that they got that cleaned up. That's
That's awesome. Yeah. And I heard about the success and horror stories when it comes to using mutual. I think I briefly used that when I was still in Utah, but I just to check it out. But I didn't really have anything, I mean, fruitful or successful, which was fine. And I tried Bumble. I like Bumble in a sense that it's more about women empowerment, reaching out. And I know that's going to be like a 50-50. Like, I like to be reach out by a guy first versus I'm like, you know what, I'll take matters into my own hands and I'll say hi to that person that I matched. So so that's just been a really interesting experience. But I think yes, with COVID it was definitely a challenging time for dating, but I think dating apps, for me, my personal point of view, is a resource. It's not it's not 100%. I'm. This is the only way to meet people, but it's just one of those, resource that you can tap into, and see how you feel about it. You kind of have to do a trial and error when it comes to online dating and dating apps and whatnot, and you have to have like a very open mind coming into these apps. And I think for me, I believe like energy attracts like energy. So how you come into those dating apps, those are the type of people that you're gonna be attracted to or get attracted to. But it's neither right or wrong. I mean, you get to do trial and error when it comes to dating anyway. So few
nice.
cents on that. Yeah.
It's a weird world now. I mean, speaking as the older, more wise of the group,
Oh yeah.
it's totally different. I mean, I come from the world where you met people at dances or like sporting events or at the mall, getting
I'm
a,
I'm
getting a
I'm the
milkshake.
awkward. I'm the awkward kind of person when it comes to. I went to BYU Hawaii dance, and that was cool when you're with friends. But I never really had the experience of like, hey, you got asked out, or somebody says hi at the grocery store. I'd probably be like, hey, why are you talking to me? I'm dancing with my friends, kind of type of person. The awkward, the better, I guess.
Yeah, or back
Yeah,
in the
meeting people at
day.
the dances just was not my age anymore. Just like even like when I was doing them, it's just not the mindset
Mm,
anymore. It has to be through other places. I know it definitely was a great resource in the past.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's the older generation that's like, hey, back in my day, we used to meet girls at dances. I think we should bring dances back in 2020. And everybody's like, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't work anymore.
Well,
Well, I
I
mean, back
was.
then it was so different. You had fun when you went to the malt shop in your T-Bird or something. It's
That's true.
not these
Yeah.
days anymore.
Well, I went to
That's right.
Costco. I went to Costco and there's this gorgeous person, gorgeous guy. I think he just got out of he was in his workout clothes and he was at the meat section of all places. And so I thought I'm like I'm gonna try this out and say hi to this person. And then I just ended up following him all over Costco and just getting whatever he was getting. And then I wanted to say hi, but I just got tongue tied and I'm like, this is not working out for me at this age. Even just like, hi, how's that meat right there? I could not utter that word. And so I kept following him, and then I finally like, you know what? I'm just gonna check out, and I got like $200 worth of Costco stuff that I didn't plan. That's what Costco does to you anyway. So.
Well, that you were trying to impress the guy, right? Trying to
I know, but
look
I
at
was
me.
behind him. I was behind, and I'm just like, should I say hi now? Should I say hi now? But like, no. Okay, so fail, total fail. Hashtag fail. So.
Oh yeah. Well, you women have it. You guys have it made, man. Trust me. I guarantee, Kristen, if you would have said hi, he would have totally talked to you. If it was reversed, if it was Corey walking up to some woman at a store going, hi, she'd been like, run away, creeper, stranger alert. Where's my whistle?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no. So I don't know. And he was tall and he was like bearded and probably married. Yeah, I didn't see a ring, but who knows? Like here in California, you just never know. That's one thing I check first, the hand, if they have the ring. So yeah, and then the eyes.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, and yeah, there definitely is power of like recognizing what you do well with, because like I'm trying to work on it, but like trying to be, the suave person with, complete control of the social situation, walk up and talk to a girl and get her phone number, I like cannot do. But if it's kind of a one-on-one or, quick, meet and greet, it goes a lot better. So
Yeah, it definitely takes a little practice. I come from like I said, I come from different generations. So I've always met people kind of through like social gatherings. And so for me, Facebook, like these Facebook groups are kind of that digital version of like being in a social gathering, right? Because you can listen to topics, listen to conversations, you can chime into conversations, give your feedback, you can compliment somebody on a conversation that they had on the feed, and maybe that strikes up another conversation offline. So for me, the Facebook groups work better than just like the dating apps. Like I've just never had any luck with dating apps, and I know a lot of the apps too are very age discriminating. Like there are women that are like, there's women that like they narrow their search down to like 35 to 45. It's like, well, I'm not even in that group, so I never have anybody like reaching out or matching with me back when I did the apps, or maybe they're like 30 to 40 and I'm 45 and I'm like, oh, nobody likes a 45-year-old, I guess, right? So because of those filters, it's very limiting. Like at least with the Facebook group, you're not putting your age out there right away.
That's true.
You're getting to know somebody.
Yeah.
So
chat keeps saying that 40 plus, 46 plus single adult dancers are going strong. So
oh yeah. And then somebody said dances outside Utah are a rare way to meet people, especially if you're over 40. So very interesting.
But that's the beauty of diversity. The beauty of diversity, it's pros and cons. See what works for you. I think for me, dating app, let's play with the age range, see what works. Because after my divorce, I didn't really know what my type was until I played around with, is it the age? Is it the height? Is it hair without hair? Or so I had to, and the dating app for me was like, again, a resource to see what's out there, and still being out of my comfort zone, but at the same time still in my comfort zone. It's easy to hide behind the screen and match people. It's like your online shopping. but with a horrible refund policy when it comes. You can never get your time back, but yes.
Yeah, well, it's like Amazon. It's like Amazon, the dating world, except that buyer remorse is on both ends.
Oh my gosh!
Like,
Add to cart, yes, please.
and then
Oh,
they're
gosh.
like, they're like, no, please take me out of your cart.
Please unmatch me right now.
Yeah, so a
That's
little different there.
It is.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
like, yeah, you go around with your cart, load all your cart up, and then you're like, you know what? Do I really need all this stuff? And then you're like one of those people that leave the cart in the aisle like full of stuff, and then you just sneak out. Like, that wasn't my cart.
Yeah. What did I get? Yeah. Again, but again, I mean, yeah, you just have to be open minded when you're jumping into like dating apps. And for women, I think for us, number one is safety. Like meet in public places. If right now, if you can video chat first or do a phone call, do that first to make sure that that person is real. I know it's different experience for guys because I've heard horror stories of like being catfished, and I think it goes both ways, but I just heard more of like guys getting catfish more so than women. So yeah, safety first, everyone who's wanting to contemplate into the dating app world.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Anyway, back to
So,
you, Scott. So
yeah. So what is it you're looking for, Scott? Like, what is the type of person that you're out there looking for? Is there an age specific? Has kids, no kids, never had kids? Like, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I would say probably without kids. Could be, preferably, never married before. Or I could see somebody who's had, divorced, not have kids. Looking for closer to my age range, I would say. Like I think I get along with, girls who are, like 22 or something like that. But I think a little bit like closer to my age I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Active in the gospel,
no
obviously.
cougars.
No. No,
Okay, fine. Okay,
only
fine.
if they
To each his
went to
own. To each his
BYU,
own.
then you're a cougar by
Yeah.
definition, because I
So
went to
maybe,
the same
they
school.
were cougar, like as a BYU grads.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay, that's what I meant.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not being
Wink,
exclusive
wink.
with
Yeah.
people who went to BYU.
Mhm.
But yes, I do like, women who are, well educated and, working.
Yep.
Not just somebody who just wants to, be a mom their whole life. Someone who is, interested in engaging and wanting to, have a life and adventure to share.
Yeah.
For girls who are taller, I like dark hair. Yeah. The rest has
Sounds
kind of just been experimentation.
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
How about
So
personality? Personality. Where does personality play into part in all this? You want like quirky, funny, more serious, another coder, kind of. So that's not a personality, but yeah, sure.
No, that fits. Coder would be, nerdy. I don't know. No, I prefer more like warm or more warm, bubbly.
Warm and bubbly. Okay, warm and bubbly gals out there. Scott. So
I think it would be tough to have two coders. I mean, two engineering minded people. It could be might be a little stale after a while. You're like, man, I think when you date somebody who's a little bit different than you're always learning
Yeah,
something from them. You're always kind of, it keeps excitement going.
Somehow I keep falling for women who are healthcare professionals.
okay.
So
The
yeah, you
nurturing
attract the
kind.
caregivers,
Nurturing, the
Or
nurturers.
just they
Yeah.
happen to have that career. I don't know.
Well, that's a personality type. So like, my therapist after my divorce said that I had a rescuer personality because of my job. And so I always tend to go after the crazy women, the women that create drama, create emergencies. I got to come in and help it save them. And then, I get some kind of, reward, for that. There's like this weird, rescuer
Right.
reward.
I remember the talk that you would give. Everyone in
Yeah,
chat, listen to
so
his if you haven't heard it already.
which one?
Yours.
Oh, mine. Yeah.
I've only been able to see two. The first one that got me interested, and then I caught yours.
Oh,
That
good.
you're giving about your life and whatnot.
Yeah. I was talking a little bit about so that was kind of like, so they say doctors and nurses, caregivers, they tend to like, those are actually not bad people to get with is nurses.
Mm-hmm.
At least they know how to care for people, right?
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
The last girl who I was seeing seeing seriously was applying to be an RN.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so like let's kind of transition over to the topic a
Let's
little.
do. I think it is a good segue.
It is a
It
good
is,
segue.
yeah.
You said you had somebody who was very serious.
Right, and I guess now to kind of get into the main topic. We'll not dwell too much on the particulars, but I want to kind of set the atmosphere for what was going on when I needed to get help, and then get to where I am right now. In a nutshell, the last girl who I was seeing seriously a couple of months ago had been seeing for about a year, and we connected really well. It got really serious. Like we were engaged and whatnot, but long story short, it ended up not working. I think was fault on both sides, and I had admitted to her, but I was still struggling. With pornography.
Okay.
It was something that I had seen as a child, and had been intervened, and that was quelled until about the end of college, and it kind of gone up and down kind of ever since, and had still really been an issue. And as this was becoming more and more an issue, and as seeing more and more that the relationship was not going to work, I got in a pretty low place. I think everyone is quite familiar of feeling just on one day randomly just feeling kind of down and whatnot. I was feeling kind of just constantly I don't know how to describe it other than a weight. Like I was trying to do the right thing and figure out what was going on. So for the first time in my life, I reached out to LDS Family Services to get help on the pornography, and also to receive professional counseling. Just kind of parse through my relationship, and just I don't know, just some way to work through my emotions, whatnot. Full-blown addiction, it definitely not. Looking back, it became, I don't know, more of a way of something to see at the end of the day when you're feeling rough. But of course, if you do it again, it's kind of just even worse. It was something that a quick band-aid, but it just led to a feeling worse, whatnot, basically.
It sounds like
getting your just desserts.
It sounds like it wasn't like a full-blown like addiction, but there's a lot of things that we do that we can become repetitive. It can become like routine, but it's not like a full-on like addiction, like by the definition of addiction. I mean, there's times where I eat too much chocolate. It doesn't make me addicted to chocolate. It just like sometimes I'm like, man, I really like chocolate, and I'm on a chocolate kick for a little while. But
true.
I don't
But
think
definitely, was being an issue, and probably putting play into the relationship as well, with comparing and whatnot. But thankfully, now to kind of pull my way out, the counselor I was seeing, kind of during the end of this relationship, and when we'd broken up, I was still seeing him. He's a very methodical guy. Wanted to really talk through and help me process through a lot of what I was feeling, is incredibly helpful, and had recommended me a number of books and whatnot. I don't know if I feel good about it or bad about it, but we would meet. He would recommend a book or whatnot, and I would come back like the next time and be like, yeah, I really enjoyed that book. He's like, wait, you read the entire book? I was like, well, I'm paying it. Well, in my mind, I can be kind of a penny pincher. I'm kind of being less now, but I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I am paying you X amount of money every single time we meet. I think I am invested in this self-improvement process. So he was very happy about that. So I think through, me really wanting to, get over this and whatnot, and after a couple of his books, he had recommended me one that, looking back, I'm now realizing was something I think that was really transformative. And I say that not like, in the gospel sense, born a better person. It was change my perspective, or a lot of principles like we hear in the gospel where we don't really learn any new information, but it puts it in a way that it kind of helps you see it, for what it is, or just to see it in a new way, and you could appreciate different aspects of it.
Yeah.
What the book was, it's called Wild at Heart: Discovering the Secrets of a Man's Soul by John Eldredge. This is written by an individual who's not a member of our faith. They believe he's a born again Christian. So what is in the book? He describes what he has learned as a counselor and through his religious journey of what it is to be a man and to have a relationship with God. And again, as I kind of go over these principles, I'm sure I'm not going to be, teaching you guys, anything new. Most everyone here is older than me, but and obviously, like, since he's born again, they kind of have a lot of opinions in gospel context that, we don't really agree with. They really don't like Adam and Eve, but apart from that, I think there is a lot that we share in common.
And so you read that book, and then what was it that changed you? What made that book more significant than the other ones you read?
What really helped? Kind of in three parts. My camera is not wanting to record.
There you go. You're back.
Okay. So what he did, just kind of in three parts, really, was kind of to explain kind of the issues that have always gone on with men, like why they don't feel so much like a man, why they don't rise up, what leads to a lot of these problems, and then kind of how in scripture or in otherwise we are able to have a solution, like how can we fix this, how can we rise up and feel like a man. And then I'm kind of just what to do about it. It's like, therefore, what you've been empowered. So the first part, when he's describing kind of the issue, he made it pretty broad. Like, he talks to tons of men and whatnot. There is this sense, I don't know if a lot of you guys see it. There's basically, these two types of men that, you can fall into in one of your lives. One is you're so worried of, somebody who might call you out, like you feel like you're an imposter, where, somebody's come down and say, you're not fooling anybody, you can't do it, you're not a man. So there's, men become either extremely, passive. They're just trying to be as nice as possible, and, they can't connect with their wives, or they go completely opposite direction, where they try to build up a facade of being super tough, can't be hurt by anybody, can handle any situation, but it's all for show. And John Eldredge in the book really compares that in the scriptures of individuals, of like Pharisees, commanding so much authority over people, but it was all for show. They're just building a hedge around the law. Or are there individuals who David or something, who became submissive and beguiled by a woman and wouldn't rise up to defend his country. Whereas he says what examples of men that we should be would be like a soldier. You think of, we have a lot more examples. The armies of Helaman. They are strong men who are disciplined. They know their purpose. They know there are others working with them.
Correct.
And when
Yeah.
we think of Christ, he had all power in the universe, but he was very purposeful. Every place he went and had to do something specific for that person. He doesn't heal, he doesn't heal blindness the same way twice. He heals 3 people with blindness in different ways because they're different people. He's very disciplined and directed. Somebody's saying, who's the author of the book? It's John Eldredge.
And what's the name of the book again, if you can?
It's called Wild at Heart, Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul. Yeah, Gary in the chat has it.
There we go.
Yeah, so I think that's actually pretty that's pretty insightful because I was reading some leadership books recently, and I kind of got on the a little bit of the leadership bandwagon of Jocko Willink, who was a Navy SEAL, and now he's got like a business consulting kind of business now where he consults managers, and he kind of brings these principles of what it was like when he was a warrior, when he was a SEAL team leader, and when he was out having to lead people. And again, he's leading an elite unit of nothing but A-type personality people. So he talks a lot about, all these guys are Navy SEALs, but how do you lead them and get them to follow you, right? So one of the books that I read that I thought was really, really well written, had a lot of great principles and ideas about the kind of the warrior mentality, was Discipline Equals Freedom. And it's like a field manual. And he kind of talks a little bit about how being a disciplined person actually leads to freedom, where his concept was like, see, people think when you're disciplined, it leads to slavery. Like, I'm not free to do stuff. And I don't, I have all these rules and I'm not, and it's the exact opposite. He says discipline leads to freedom. And we've heard our leaders in the church say that, like, when we say like obeying the commandments actually leads to freedom. And, and it's almost the same kind of concept. It was interesting you brought up he was talking about the warrior mentality. It's interesting because I've read some other books about that warrior mentality and how, warriors have to be responsible. They have to be disciplined. You carry a greater responsibility because of your training. I mean, when you actually meet a true warrior who's trained to kill people, like they are really highly trained, they're not going to bars to pick fights, and they're not picking fights on the streets, and they're not getting in road rage situations because they know the responsibility that they have in their power and their ability to hurt somebody. So it's a different mentality. It's almost like what you were saying about the 2 types of men, Scott, about like, you get the men who are kind of like out there kind of being super aggressive, trying to prove that they're men, being super aggressive. And then you have the ones that don't need to do that. They already are disciplined, masculine men. They don't have to go out there and kind of, overemphasize, look, I'm a man, when everything is inside them says they're not. Does that make sense? I think that's what you were kind of saying the book was kind of getting to.
Yeah, it definitely does. Really, yeah, so much focuses on, what that issue is, that longing, am I enough? Am I, can I do it? Can I balance my job and be there, for my wife? And it comes down to that discipline and whatnot. He kind of continues with not so much like obviously for us, in, gospel context, we have, a lot of direction and discipline in, we have, callings, we have our covenants and whatnot that we have specifically to do. But what his focus is mostly on your personal relationship with God, because he's saying, you do have to rise up and be a soldier, because look at the world around you. We are in a fallen earth, but during creation, when he was making the butterflies and the bees, he made great white sharks and big black bears and whatnot, and he pronounced it all good. That we are put into danger. There are, there are things that are, wild and unpredictable, but, we are separate individuals. We have a chart. Well, I'm not sure what he said specifically, but we know we have a charge to, to master our environment, to be fruitful, multiply, and have joy. There, that he's like, well, this is life. You can't control everything in your environment unless you bury yourself in the ground. There's a certain amount of wildness that you just have to embrace life. You want to feel inadequate, then start going to help people. And if you feel like you're all great, well, start going to help people, and then it'll give you a mirror for what you actually have to work on.
Exactly. Yeah. So for you kind of felt like, I mean, looking back on it, like where do you think it all began? Like, what was it that you missed, or what was it that you were suffering from? What was it that kind of pushed you into that area, or pulled you into that area?
Looking back, I'm not so sure what it was. He mentions, so much it can happen from, abusive, abusive parents with, they didn't have a great father figure. It could be, I think, maybe more my personality, obviously, go to, computer science. I'm definitely more introverted. So there's just maybe, I think a lot of it was an issue of like not expressing, my emotions or opening up. There's more of attention to, ball it up and kind of feeling, alone, like you're, it's you against the world type thing.
Yeah.
And he also talks of kind of how you, right, in that, like, these, men all over the world feel like they're imposters, how you can help. And it comes from kind of other groups of men. And it's something that I guess I'm trying to work on a lot more now, where this may be hard for the ladies to hear, that while, men and women, we need each other, but ladies, you don't make a man a man. And I say that where, as much as ladies can do, they, can't, they can't, give them the slap on the back and saying, way to go, you did a good job on that. That doesn't have any meaning like it does with guy friends. And I'm not just talking about, guys shooting darts, at the pub or whatnot. I'm talking about doing really hard things, your Boy Scout camps, your scaling or, rock climbing or whatnot. He says there's, as it was intended, men are supposed to band together to be, to be soldiers and to lift each other up. And what you need to do with what you have, and what you need to do with what you have learned is recognize that, others who you're with are on this journey together. So since I have, read this, it has been, I've tried to like band with other, like guys who I am friends with, members of the church or not, to let them know that, hey, you are a great friend, you're loyal. I'm really, I'm really glad I get to know you. Like really, really, really trying to emasculate them. help them understand that, they do have that. Like a lot of men who I, work with, they're not in a great, place right now, but I'm letting you know, like you have the skills. I recognize these things about you. I, appreciate you. Yeah, I have your
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, I would have to play the devil's advocate here. I think I thanks for sharing everything so far. Um, I think there's the thought of like a man's man, like the bro code kind of world. But I personally believe that every successful man is a woman. And that's the thing with feminine and masculine energy is we all have that. A man can have a feminine energy, a woman can have the masculine energy, and it's just an interplay of how we show up in, for ourselves in the world. And and that's the beauty of like individuality. We can have those divine traits that it can play, like you're the caring, nurturing kind of person as a dad or as a husband. And then there's also a part of us women who can like, hey, we can, I don't know, like it's probably not the best example, like change the tires or take out the trash. Out the trash is big for me. It's a man's job.
Yeah.
No, but
Well,
Have him do
what I'm
it.
saying is
yeah,
that there is that role. I mean, as Gary has mentioned, like the role for both men and women. It's that we have to acknowledge that. But there's
Mhm.
also like the sisterhood and the brotherhood, and that's why, like, as far as how we are structured in the church.
Yeah, I can understand that. And of course, he talks about, the man is not without the woman, nor the woman without the man. Like there is a, union there that God intends. But yeah, what I say with, um, it is men who are masculating men in that, well, at the end of the day, it's not a man's wife that is checking off his report card for salvation. It's God and his relationship with it, and having other men in his life help him reach that purpose.
yeah, I think it's
I'm
there's
seeing
different.
in real quick. I'm seeing in the chat here, how is the Savior a perfect model for both men and women? I'll talk to that real quick, as he kind of mentioned it in the book, and we have a lot of we have a lot of examples of that in our gospel. Well, for men, sometimes we think of Christ as being a very womanly, a Mother Teresa who is very mild and peaceful and a very one-on-one person. But we have examples of men can find Christ as a perfect example, because he is one who is calling his people to action. He is persistent. He does not give up. We've been fighting a war since day one. So he provides us men a perfect example of what a perfect man of strength can be. Is someone who can handle anything that's thrown at him, physical. He can handle a journey in the wilderness by himself, and he can quick wit any Pharisee that throws any question at him.
Yeah,
For
I
women,
agree that yeah, I think it's important. There's also a greater thing that's been happening over the last, I would say, 20 years. I mean, my boys have suffered from it too, is that society has really kind of downplayed like men, at least in schools and outside of the home, where they say like, I used to get a lot of phone calls from the school about my boys roughhousing and being rough at school. And they're saying, you really should talk to your sons and tell them to stop being rough. And, it could be perceived as bullying. And I would ask my boys, I'm like, what is it? They just like the roughhouse. But they were being told that that was wrong. But when they're at home with me, we would wrestle all the time. Like they would jump on me and they would be like pulling my leg and they would double team on me, and they just wanted to roughhouse. And they
Yeah,
wanted
he
to,
mentions that in What's an Issue. It's like they want them to behave, like girls who are nice and calm. It's the
yeah,
demasculation of men in society. And the
that's been
feminists
going
are
on the
like,
last
I
20
don't
years.
want a toxic man. It's like, well, I understand you don't want, jerk boy Chad, but what do you want? You want a man to be a man, because, these women are like, where are all the, all the real men, or where's the good boys, or where's all the men who hold the priesthood? Why don't they just exercise it? Well, you have to realize, like that you don't want boys to be girls. I mean, I remember when I was little, you got to run around and whatnot, but yeah, you got to have recess. Let kids have that avenue, and as long as they are not actively killing each other, let them have sports and play. Joseph Smith was a child at heart. Dang right. They were all, him and his family are all frontiersmen,
Yeah. Well,
Joseph Smith, go play, go cut down a maple tree,
Well, Joseph Smith
they were big boys.
Yeah, Joseph Smith loved to wrestle, and he loved to do the pull at the stick. And there's a great story with Joseph Smith where he was getting kind of railroaded a lot by a lot of the local preachers, and he invited this one particular preacher over that was really, really kind of just a rude kind of a guy, was talking bad about him in the church. And so he came over and he said, hey, why don't you come over for Bible study? So he came over and they were doing the Bible study thing. And at the end of it, the preacher got upset and left. And he said, hey, Reverend so-and-so, since you couldn't best me at the scriptures, why don't you see if you can best me at pull the stick? And and it was just kind of Joseph Smith's kind of masculine way of, like, he was a masculine guy, and he rubbed people the wrong way sometimes that way. But there's a lot of stories about Joseph Smith when you see the Lord start some of his prophecies off saying, Joseph Smith, your sins are forgiven you. And people wonder why you see that in the right before he precedes a revelation, because he was always pestering the Lord, like asking the Lord for forgiveness, because he was a rough and tough guy. He solved a lot of problems with his fists back in the day. So,
right. And then he describes when, 4 years later, when he receives the visit from Moroni, he's asking again for forgiveness because of the foibles of my youth. And it's like, well, what is he doing? He's being a kid. He's acting out and joking, and fighting, but
being silly and wrestling around. And is that really dignified? And there was even members of the church in Nauvoo that thought it was undignified for him to wrestle around with his kids. And so, he's out in the front yard running, rolling around with his kids and wrestling. And so
I don't know. And sometimes it may be hard for us now. It's like looking at the brethren of, like, seeing that they're all older and whatnot. But a lot of times I usually think back to just like quick examples of like President Monson or whatnot, where, you see, okay, this is a kid who, as soon as he's able, is drafted into the Navy, and as soon as he gets back, he is married and then is called to be the bishop of the largest ward, I think, in the church of Salt Lake, and carrying up all these widows. And you see these guys at the end of their life who have worked their entire life for other people in the service. They know how to govern the church, and they have done so for decades.
Yeah. I think that you're right about that. That's an issue today. This the wording, like the phrasing of toxic masculinity and microaggressions, and that men shouldn't act aggressive. But that's just the nature of men. I mean, men are, I mean, I've been in arguments with my friends, and then it was said and done. I've been in fights with my friends, and then we were buds the next day. And like, that's all we needed was like a little confrontation, a little bit of toxic masculinity between the two of us. And then things were resolved, and, a couple of bro pats on the back, and we were moving on. And I think that it's a little different nowadays.
Obviously, that comes from knowing, each other, and, your relationship, with other people. And I'd tie it back to the context of being able to really feel like a man. Because one of the things I am realizing as I had kind of recovered was, one, being with this group, like understanding this kind of helped me, get a good mindset. But then also, as I was in LDS Family Services, because what we had, it was all online, but it was all of us guys who wanted to work and to improve ourselves, listening to, what the, speakers were saying and presenting, kind of how the addiction works, what it triggers, how you can watch your, when you are, like, habits and whatnot that lead up to it. But having us all together in a group, especially all of us guys, I think we were able to, be there and support each other a lot. It really would have been helpful to, like, if we got to meet in person. But
Yeah.
even just the little bit that we had was really good. We were checking up on each other. Like, how has your week been doing? Oh, I've been feeling really good. Oh, I've been really rough. It's stuff with my wife. And I would, reach in. I would text some of these guys. I was like, hey, you need to talk. Like, I'm sure this is not something you really want to, talk about with your wife. Whatnot. Like, it was really that helping you feel, included in a group and a man.
Yeah.
It's also such an issue I had seen, and this book also suggests, like, pornography is such a snare because you don't feel like a man. You don't feel like you're someone who can, rise up and, support, a woman in person, or you can't get out there and, fight for one of them. So there's the, a women online you don't have to fight for, and, it's, you'll be susceptible to that. See, 2000
Exactly.
Stripling Warriors is a great example why women mothers are important in a man's life.
Yeah.
I'll
replied
say
to
to
that and
that one.
said
That one is
balance.
really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, because,
Have
well,
balance.
okay. What one quick thing on that, I think there's maybe a parenthesis issue or whatnot. This is the 2000 Stripling Warrior saying, we do not doubt, comma, our mothers knew it. Like, these guys obviously knew that their mothers knew that the gospel was true. But when these guys are, when those Stripling Warriors are fighting and bleeding and having Lamanites come, like, trying to kill them, somebody else's testimony is not enough. We do not doubt, our mothers knew that we knew. Our mothers knew it. Yeah.
Yeah. They had a
So, but
strong testimony.
that's what saved them, not just mom and dad's testimony.
So
Okay,
another question on here.
Okay, there's so much thoughts to
I
process,
know. I'm kind of just
and
fire
I've been
hosing. Sorry.
listening, and I know this topic will be triggering for others. It's a sensitive topic to really dive into. A part of me, you tap into like the feminist and like the toxic masculinity, as Corey mentioned earlier, and all that. But I think I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here. There is and it's like for us women, it's been long time coming. Like the hashtag Me Too. If you know that that was, I think for me, that was like a very good eye opener to what the society has put men and women in both roles. And
Okay.
there is power for us women to support the masculine role, but at the same time being able to create that community, just like what you mentioned, like the sort of like that brotherhood, um that that allows us to voice our own, I mean, to voice pretty much our own thoughts, our own feelings about certain um mold or society expectations of the society. And I think I do respect the masculine role. I do. I grew up in a very structured and traditional family, but at the same time, over time, when especially after my divorce, I've seen the value of what men and women can contribute to either a relationship, the community, society in general. And so I think it falls down now, and I think this is what is being emphasized now, that us as individuals will have the power to choose, um, and create that awareness whether to play that feminine or masculine role for us, for our families, and for our relationship and whatnot. I do see the again the value of each gender role supporting each other, to be the best versions of ourselves. And it's hard that we I mean, I think for me, it's the unboxing. I call it the unboxing because you don't necessarily fit the mold, but is fitting the mold really something that you want to live, down the road? Is it something that you want to encourage for yourself, that you're just in that particular role, or are you unboxing yourself and opening up the horizon of what you or what you can contribute for yourselves? And again, it's a little bit triggering for me, because I feel like, yes, as women, especially the women in the church, we do support that role, but there's just a certain I think, voice heard for us women these days, that we're just out there more empowered.
So hearing that, you feel like it's brought a lot of forefront to, there's not just characteristics that are masculine and just characteristics that are feminine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all have that role to play, whether you're again, as I've mentioned earlier, a nurturing kind of guy, or as women, we're the protective kind of parent or individual towards your
there's a role for both, and I think
Yes.
like people have said that nobody's 100% masculine or 100% feminine,
Yes,
and that's true. But I think what we've seen the last 20 years is an overzealousness. It's like the pendulum swinging way too far. Like maybe at one point it was super masculine, the society was super masculine, but now it's, rather than just bring it to a happy balance, it's like society has been creaming men for the last 20 years. Our young men have been growing up and being told and taught in school that their aggressiveness and their wrestling and their all that kind of stuff is unacceptable. And I think that we have to be, what we're saying is that you have to have a balance there. The men are going to always be, boys are always going to be boys, right? They want to pick up sticks and they want to play army, and to tell them that picking up sticks and playing with them like they're guns is wrong, and playing army is wrong, and they shouldn't be horse playing and pushing each other down, that's wrong. And I think it just over and over and over, we don't allow boys to be boys, to just kind of have that boy camaraderie. It's hard for, I think, for women to understand when you're growing up that boys are just rough. They love to horseplay, they love to play hard, and it's just, I think that we have to have that balance. And I think that our society today, at least the last 20 years I've seen with my boys, is that they've really been pushing boys to be more mellow, like chill out in school and be quiet and study and, and stay out of trouble. And I think that, it's just been rough on boys over the last few years, but let's go back to, what you were saying.
Well, there definitely is. I agree. We can, I think I see the chat is very much, going crazy on that. There are, in my mind, I never had really felt it so much. There are characteristics, that make you, that is more male than female or whatnot. I had never, going through this, I had never really felt that, or had never really felt like, if I own a gun or if I do this, I am more of a man. It's more the empowerment of it. Like, I am a man of God. Whatever I need to, whatever happens in my life, I know that, I can do this. I can do this thing, regardless of, whatever characteristics I happen to have.
Yeah. So when you were in the program, were there any women that you knew of? I mean, obviously not in your group, maybe not in your group, but were there any women that you knew of that were struggling with pornography?
No, the group I was with was all men.
Okay.
The teachers, counselors, it was 2 guys and 1 woman.
And this was an LDS program, right?
Yeah, through LDS Family Services.
Okay, yeah. I think somebody asked in the questions in there, did you ever think about outside of the church therapy or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously LDS Family Services is through the church. The therapist who I was seeing is a local here in Utah, and is not you can ask them if you want someone who is LDS based, and I believe the individual who the therapist who I was meeting with is LDS, but the emphasis wasn't so much on that. It was, good to know that, he knew that, so we were able to talk some things, but this, most of our conversations were pretty general.
Yeah. That's interesting. And then, so what was it that you felt, what was key in helping you kind of get out of that situation with pornography?
Just that mindset of I guess it really was like, I did really feel the Spirit, like, reading through this, of saying, well, look, these guys love the Old Testament, because they don't have the Book of Mormon. So I was like, oh, I'm seeing this, I'm understanding the scriptures, more, like putting a very real person, to this. They're working through these issues. Like, it helps me understand it. This really is important. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but if I can rely, on Christ through whatever I am going through, I recognize there is a need for me. Like, I felt a spiritual prompting, like, I, can be this, I can be supportive of my friends, whatever they're going through. I can let them know of their, positive characteristics. So once I had finished, so I guess we're bringing it full circle. Once I had finished the LDS Family Services, and once I had finished the book, I was really getting into dating again, and as part of that, found this this podcast. So at the time, I was thinking, I kept having a spiritual prompting that I need to share what I've learned. I need to, and of course, this podcast came up, and there's the topic that I want to talk about, how applying this and having it in the forefront of mind really helped me to. I remember, like, a specific night where I was struggled so hard. I'm like, no, we're not gonna do it. And I pushed through the night and just felt like such a breakthrough. I felt so empowered. I didn't have to rely on that. I could push through that. I felt like I could push through anything.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
Yeah,
that led
that's
to,
probably,
I could able to share the stuff on the podcast, and I feel like I've just
that's
been
awesome.
rumbling and bumbling, but it's, has felt great to be able to share that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So
And
I have so what would you say, like, if there's somebody out there, maybe in this group, or maybe who watches this afterwards, on their own, and they're struggling with pornography, what would you tell them? Like, if you could tell them face to face, what would you do and say to them if they're struggling with this?
If I could do that, make a very generalized message, I would say, you can do this, and anything else that you're struggling through in your life. We know by revelation that you, in fact, chose this hard life before the world was. There's a God in heaven who cares deeply about you, and there are family and friends who want to help you as well. It is a sign of, how do I say it, strength, yes, but is also, it is just smart to be able to reach out for help if it needs to be, through bishop. I've had great bishops in the past. If that be through trusted friends and family, and it's something to open up, to share what you are feeling,
mhm.
and that your feelings, whether you're a guy or a girl, are very valid. And it is rough. It's not just a one and done thing, but the investment that you get to put into yourself and in your life is incredibly fulfilling. And if you need
Yeah,
help, I'm here for you.
Yeah,
I would say that's great. Go ahead,
yeah.
Christina.
Yeah, because I thanks for sharing, because I think it makes it, the way it sounds like is it's doable. It's hard. It's a hard process. I could only imagine, but it is doable for anybody who's wanting to better themselves, get out of the rut, as they say. And there is wisdom when one recognizes that uh, there was something that needs to be worked on. Not necessarily, I don't want to say like you're a broken person when you're trying to fix something, because I think part of it is, we all go through trials and tribulations as human beings. And, it's just a matter of like, when do we recognize that we're able to do something about it, to move forward and live that best life that is, that you're deserving of. Yeah. So and that you're not alone, you know.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest part, is because there is a feeling of stigma, of maybe a little bit of embarrassment that you're caught up in this life. And I think for a lot of people out there, I'm hoping that watch this, how do you make that first step? Because like you said, you want somebody trusted to talk to. Maybe if it was me, I might reach right out for LDS services and start into counseling right away, to see if I can ease myself into like, okay, let's talk to people about this. Like you said, that having a group setting too, of knowing you're not the only one out there, and hearing other people's struggles and what's being successful with them, might be a good first start. And then as you kind of get a handle of things, then go to your bishop and start the process there too. I don't
And
know.
for anyone not following chat, yeah, they're listing a lot of different ones. There's some Hazelton Clinic, Fight the New Drug is an incredibly good one. Got really popular a couple of years ago. There's lots of different resources available.
Ooh, there's a really good question on the chat. What can us as women do to help a guy we are dating that has admitted to struggling with this type of issue?
What I would say is, if it's this or any other issue, it's to emasculate him as you can. Never, whine like, oh, if you, rise up, be a man of God, or like, pout or compare. There is an issue of, obviously you have to know the person, but it's saying, I am recognizing the effort that you're putting in. I thank you for it. I mean, it's got to be really rough for women, because there must be some thought of, am I not enough? But I would say to that, like, I don't think it is that. I don't think it's he's going on because he's comparing. He thinks there's some other woman that's better than you. It's a lot of times pornography, it's being used as a as an escape, or it's has become a habit or whatnot. It's not so much who he's seeing. It's just like a very visual stimulation.
Like a
So
fantasy
I would
world they
say,
go into.
it's not so much that, it's just becomes a habit. I had a habit of, if it was just kind of, if you go to the side, or when you're laying down or whatnot, it all became so easy. So breaking those habits really helped. So yeah, for women trying to help out a man, it's to be patient, and to recognize when they actually are trying, and don't put up for crap if you can tell that they're really not putting in that effort.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
really identifying you are trying. So
Yeah, I just want
yeah,
to ask.
I had a friend, that reached out to me, and she asked what she could do. She found out her husband was struggling with pornography. And it was kind of interesting, because I was in computers, and she had reached out and said, do you know what tool I could use to get the browser history? And I didn't know what that was about, but I said, oh yeah, here's a couple of tools you can try out. And then eventually, a couple of weeks later, she had called and said, okay, my husband, yeah, I found out he's addicted to pornography. We're both going to counseling. He's going to counseling, but we're also going to marriage counseling together. And so she was like gung ho to save her marriage, gung ho to save her husband, and she was all in on making their marriage better, and healing her husband. And so it was kind of interesting. I guess like you were saying, Scott, like having that support system is so important. Like she didn't degrade him or demean him, and like, oh, what kind of a man are you, or any of that kind of stuff. It was,
Yeah.
she was all in to help him, and they got through it. So
Yeah, I think I just want to recognize too, because I'm just reading a lot of the messages from the chat, that pornography does not only affect men. There are women out there that also go through this process, maybe not as vocalized as with men. But I think there's that recognition that pornography addiction in general is very it destroys
Male
one,
dominant.
yeah, male dominant, but also it affects both male and women, I mean men and women's worth. And I think to also answer that question is to not impose judgment on when you for on yourself and on others, because once
Correct.
and it's easier said than done. And I think at the end of the day, you want to ask yourself, like, if this person is opening up to me, why is it important that that person is opening up to me and not to others? So there's a level of trust and comfort when somebody opens up to you. I think not just in pornography, but other issues in general.
Yeah.
But I think removing the self-judgment and the judgment towards others will allow you to recognize that this person is also a human being struggling and wanting to get better. And how to support them is, I think, just start from there and let that person open up to you if you're comfortable hearing that. And if not, you know, set your boundaries and you refer that person to maybe a professional help, or somebody that you think that can, you know, start the process with a person. So
Yeah, it's I think the key is to know that Satan's going to use, Lucifer's going to use fear, shame, embarrassment, all those negative emotions to keep you from getting help, keep you from changing. And that's always going to be his way. I mean, he's always going to try to get you, you know, fearful, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose family and friends. I'm going to, oh, I have to go talk to the bishop, or, you know, what's going to happen to me? And there's all this fear. And then Lucifer goes in and amplifies it and just gets people to either just say, well, I'm never going back to church, or I'm going to go ahead and just leave my wife. She's not going to know why. I don't want to tell her what it is. I'm just going to leave. And I think we got to be careful and be mindful that that's how Lucifer works also. So I know that in these bulletin boards, this topic has come up out there in the bulletin boards, where there's been some women who felt burned and betrayed by pornography addiction. And it's something that I think they're very sensitive about. But if you're up for it, Scott, we'd like to open it up for questions if you're up for it, from the
Well, we're getting
audience.
plenty of questions. So yes.
we are.
Yeah,
This
we're
has
getting
been a
so
really
many
busy
flying by.
night.
I just, well, they can come on and ask them. And
Right.
so we got so many things flying by. And there's like a ton of advice, and there's tons of people referencing topics and
A lot of talks.
so
Very nice talks.
and thoughts. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you guys have a question, raise your hand.
Raise
You can
your
do
hands.
Alt Y for Windows and Option Y for Mac.
Okay.
And
Just bear in mind, I'm only 28, so if I get it wrong, I'll defer the question to Corey or Christina.
all right, Monica. So we'll have you come on.
Okay. Ooh, we got hands up.
Okay. Sorry, I'm laying in bed, so I'm on the
Oh, yeah,
closer.
okay.
I'm in the Midwest.
That's okay.
I'm tired. So I'm not gonna be on camera, but because it would just be black. But I just I don't even know how to word this question exactly, but I feel like a lot of times when we talk about pornography and we start to talk about it and link it with gender roles or gender characteristics, that we actually end up saying a lot of things that aren't necessarily true by gender.
Like what?
And so I'm kind of wondering if there are other.
Oh, was she muted? Or
Oh, somehow she got muted.
stop? Or wait.
I think she
I
bumped
got
her
muted.
mute.
Oh, you got.
It was like, shut up, Monica. No, I'm kidding.
You've been banned.
Banned from making questions. So I wonder how much we could change the discussion of things like this in the church if we had more of a conversation about men and women can both have these problems. And actually visual pornography is a huge problem for women in the general public as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not talked about as much. And And there's a lot of shame that a lot of women feel because they're grown up, like the kinds of things, I think it was Corey earlier that you were saying, oh, boys now for years are being told like, don't be loud, don't be rambunctious. I'm like, well, women have been taught that from childhood, like since time memorial in a lot of cultures, right? Like, don't be too much, don't be loud, don't be aggressive, don't fight, don't. And that doesn't mean that women don't like to do that stuff. Like I loved rolling around in the dirt and wrestling and tickling and playing with, you know, like, so I think sometimes we kind of get in this way of saying like these things are male or female characteristics. And sometimes that means that we're not addressing like the problem in kind of a way that's holistic and kind of really get to the center of like, well, what are these things that are human that we have in common that lead to these kinds of problems, right? Because it's always linked to something in terms of like sexuality, but it's also linked to other feelings, like with pornography, right? Other feelings of like insecurity, of whatever it is, right? That we're feeling, that people choose to go to this particular activity as a way to deal with something that's difficult in their life, right? And that happens for men and women. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a good way to like ask that question, or if I'm just saying, let's talk about it and think about it. But
no, I definitely think that is a good point. But yeah, as far as what to bring up, one thing that I have noticed, there definitely was, especially when I was growing up, it was more of a focus. There definitely, you know, for the men and women, for like going to the priesthood sessions and whatnot, where there was, you know, focus on, you know, pornography or whatnot is an issue. But I've noticed over time it has become, when the brethren discuss it, it is in general sessions, where it is to avoid the dangers of pornography, and it's in a general session. It's not just the priesthood session. I feel like a lot of the resources and whatnot, obviously they're not going into so much of the specifics, you know, in conference, but a lot of the resources that are available are becoming like far more accessible. If you would have asked me years ago what the church has, you know, for individuals struggling with pornography or whatever, I wouldn't be able to answer you. But now that I've like gone through a program and like seeing what other options are available, I feel like it's definitely there. And nothing I thought in the program was just directly for men. I mean, I was in a group of only men, but I didn't feel like there was anything in the material that was just directed at men. When we came to like questions and whatnot, became, you know, what do I do in this situation? I've been feeling this, you know, my wife has been dealing with what I've told her in this way, and we've, you know, come together and like talked about it. I feel like that would be a good environment to kind of have to have a conversation with, you know, other individuals who are struggling with this. And I mean, if you need more resources, it looks like the chat is completely full of different resources. Looks like somebody's even linking a TED Talk.
Right. I've seen that. And I think at the end of the day, this needs to be opened up, not just to men or women, because again, both genders has a struggle when it comes to pornography or any type of addiction. And having a good resource is a good and trusted resource definitely helps with the process, to start the process itself. So yeah.
Perfect. I also just wanted to thank Scott for coming on, because it's really brave to like come in and talk about, you know, a struggle with addiction and what you've done with it. So thanks for coming on and doing that.
Thank you.
Good thoughts, Monica.
Yeah, it's really going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Lotus as our next person to ask the question.
Hey, I'm sitting in my car, so
hey,
Hi, Lotus.
Super bright light. Hey, I agree with Monica. First of all, I think you were super brave to come out and talk about this, and so I just wanted to talk like from the point of view of a mom. I because of my children's exposure to it through my ex-husband, we've been very, very open in our home about sexuality, just kind of in general. We talk about like sex and what it's meant to be and how it's sacred. It's not a secret thing in our home, because I know that at some point my children, I knew, I guess I should say, because it's happened, that they would become exposed, especially my son, given the lifestyle that his father now leads. And so my question for you, I guess, like, how sometimes I feel like in the church we make everything so hush hush, and I understand why we do it to some extent, why we have a tendency to shy away from having conversations about sexuality and about our bodies and how they naturally function. But I also feel like that has caused a lot of issues for men and women in the church, whether it's because they struggle with pornography or because sexuality, even in marriage, has been a challenge for so many people. So my question to you is, growing up, or from your standpoint as a young man who at some point became exposed to pornography, what are some things that we as parents, or that you maybe wish your own parents would have done, or that they did do well? What can we do to be more proactive and prepared to help our children as they become exposed to these things? Because I don't care who you are. I am an amazing mom, and I know that, and my son has been exposed to it. We have had to have conversations. So anyways, that's my question.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah. Lotus, I totally understand kind of your, like, where you are coming from. A lot of it becomes so hush hush because there is so much of a focus on abstinence is the best practice. And, for us, it totally is. But then that leads to, well, you don't need to know so much about it because, that is something you will not be doing. One thing I would say to that is, well, obviously, I think conversations like that should come up when, your like kids are hitting puberty. It doesn't really make sense till before then. What I had example I had seen is describing that, kind of like sex or sexual expression and whatnot with soil and, like, planting a flower or whatnot, where we, if you have an understanding of, what we can do to, like, to grow a flower or a beautiful relationship, it needs, people to it needs, a confine, like, some sort of, control. For the example that was used is a flower pot. It's like saying, a lot of people describe it, as dirt. It's something, filthy, when, in the opposite case, there is a lot of, potential and whatnot in here. But, as Elder Holland said, a lot of our sexual impulses are like a river of fire that must be banked and cooled by 1,000 restraints or leave someone burned. So is understanding that like your bodies are changing. You've grown 2 feet in a year. Like these things are happening, and there's nothing wrong with it. But you need to understand, like, what is okay to feel, what is not okay to dwell on, and whatnot. Like, as we put in a plan, you do have to exercise some certain amount of control. That's part of our moral experience, is for our willpower to gain our control over our bodies.
Can I just say one more thing along those lines? I think that's great. I know that a number of years ago, the church actually put out a video about pornography for children. I'm going to see if I can find the link really fast to include here. But I would say, I think that waiting until puberty is a little bit too late to talk about, like the national average actually for first exposure to pornography for young men is 11 years old. That's at least a good, for most kids, 2 years before puberty really becomes a thing. So I think that I believe as a mom that we almost have to start the discussions way before then. Of course, like, it's little bit by little bit, right? Like, step by step, piece by piece, whatever. But do you feel like the conversations that your parents had with you were helpful or not helpful?
I think they were.
Yeah, with my kids, I kind of, my strategy was before my boys turned 8, I had the basic birds and the bees, like, there are no storks, there's no magic wand that, Heavenly Father mom doesn't wake up pregnant one morning because Heavenly Father put a baby in her tummy. Like all those stories we tell our young kids about how babies are made. At 8 years old, I felt obligated to let them know what the birds and the bees were, basic.
Mhm.
And then when they turned 12 and they were getting the Aaronic priesthood for the first time, is when I gave them the full on, this is sex, and this is the emotional side of sex versus the physical baby making side of sex. And so I talked to them about that. I talked to them about birth control. I showed them what a condom was, and I said, look, you have your agency. If you choose to have sex, at least protect yourself from pregnancy and other things out there. And had that hard conversation with them when they were teenagers. And so I felt that was helpful for both of them. I mean, maybe that was awkward, but at 8 years old, like, hey, you're getting baptized. And oh, by the way, there are no storks.
Yeah, I have a perfect example, at least, in my thoughts, it's a perfect example because I wasn't exposed to like kids asking questions until now. I have an 11-year-old about, the birds and the bees, but I grew up in a household where sex was not discussed. And so I learned about sex when like in college pretty much. And when I got divorced, it was one of those thoughts like, who's gonna explain these to my son? I don't know how to do it, yada yada. But then I think what happened over time, especially when I got into the coaching world, is that there's this open communication of having no shame, like, because when shame steps in, then that's kind of where people try start closing in, that it's perceived as right or wrong, when it's really neither right or wrong. And I had a conversation with my son about this, and to support what Corey was saying, that there is a level of a way to explain it to certain ages that it would resonate with them. But I think it's important that we have that open communication with our kids. The earlier the better. And I think it will benefit both the parent and the kid moving forward. I am just like a big believer that knowledge is power. The more they know, the more they can make that decision moving forward, let alone, I mean, especially with sex. And I think that needs to be an open discussion, with kindness, with respect and love when it comes to our family and our kids and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yep.
All
I
right.
like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Tanya.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have Tanya. Thank you so much, Lotus, for that. The message shared and the question shared.
Yeah, thanks, Lotus.
Yeah.
Hi, Scott. My question was kind of on the lines of where Lotus was, but I want to go back a little bit to when you were talking about men needing other men and their reassurance. And I can tell you, of being a single mom and having 2 boys, there's no way that I can give them that manly reassurance that they need to feel like they are a successful man. I mean, a pat on your back from your mom just isn't the same as a pat on the back from a guy saying, wow, that's awesome, you did a great job. I have seen that, and I hear what you're saying in that. So I think as single moms that are in this group, if you have sons where their dads are not involved, it's really important to remember that and try to find men that can come along their sons and mentor them. Like my youngest son has the most amazing friend, and they have the best bonds, and he's not even that much older than him, but he's someone that I know he can go to if he has questions, especially along this lines, if he doesn't want to come to me. So I think that was really good advice that you gave, for everyone. But going
Definitely.
back to what Lotus was saying in the lines of, because I've been doing some research with just some extra stuff on the side with my daughter. She's doing a dissertation on sexual stuff for her stuff. And so I've been noticing, because she wanted me to look like within the LDS church of, what it was like. And what I'm seeing is there are so many people that have experienced such a negative thoughts and growing up of sexual things in, you know, that nature. So it's really affected them as adults. And I was just curious, kind of like, did you find that in your home growing up? Or was it something positive? Did you see like a positive, you know, relationship between your parents?
Yes, there's definitely had a lot of like positive example of, you know, what a family, you know, should be like. My parents had a great relationship. Us as siblings have a really good relationship. For like the exposure and like learning about it outside of the, you know, potted plant example that I gave, a lot of it kind of came down to, I guess there wasn't enough conversation, I would say, and, you know, kind of led me to, you know, kind of what had happened now. So looking back on it, I would say, I don't know, like the conversations that we had kind of had gotten to, you know, there was a little bit more, you know, kind of like, you know, shame, or like it was really awkward, you know, to talk about. It wasn't so much, you know, knowledge based, like you know, Christina or Corey are saying. So if I looking back would have, you know, changed what my parents or upgrading would have been, it would have been a little bit more on that, like, you know, just straight up, this is, you know, this is what's going on. This is, you know, why there is, you know, a stigma around it.
Yeah. Well, and I think especially even as adults being single, the world will tell you that you're crazy to not be out there having sex, you know, like especially as young adults now in high school, you know, why are you not out having sex? And, you know, so I just wonder if you felt some of that, like the world will tell you it's wrong to not be experimenting it. There's so much out there. But then within the church, we're not even supposed to talk about it.
Yeah, and again, obviously, you know, this kind of providing more resources versus just, you know, abstinence means you don't need to know about it. I understand kind of that perspective, because from, you know, what I've understand, or like, you know, kind of the struggles that I've gone through, like I could really see, like, you know, doing that, or like that first time really having sex, that would be, you know, that would be such, you know, such a trigger. There's such a, you know, driving force for it. Like you just open the floodgates, and it, you know, be like any other addiction. It'd feel great. And if there's no, control or confine of marriage, it is just, you know, it is a river of fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tanya. So Jennifer, I just want to address Jennifer's question. So keep in mind, this is for the whole group too. I read a really good book. It was written by a church psychologist, and one thing that she emphasized, and I think the title of her book was called "Temptation is Not Sin." And so just the fact that you have temptation, you feel the struggle, and you're fighting with the struggle. Don't feel bad about that struggle. Don't feel bad about the temptation. That is normal. We are supposed to be tempted. And just because you have thoughts and temptations in your mind doesn't make you a sinner. That's not sin. And that's what the book was about, is that temptation is not sin. Sin is when you give in to temptation and do something, but it's not a sin to have thoughts and have feelings and passions and things well up inside. So keep that in mind out there as we struggle being single after being married and having all the sex we want to have, and then suddenly being single again and having to be without. It's such a tough thing right now. And trust me, Jennifer, we all are suffering from thoughts and feelings and desires to want to have sex. That's normal. But don't beat yourself up about it, because it's not sin to have those feelings and to have temptations to want to go out and resolve those feelings. So
That's
all right.
right.
So
And I just want to acknowledge that, because she mentioned that, you know, it's in the, you know, friends in the Philippines, and I grew up in the Philippines, so I know culturally how it is. And I think all of us just needs to acknowledge, I mean, not just, but we could acknowledge that we're all sexual human beings. We're just built that way, and there's nothing wrong when you're a sexual being. It's a matter of how do we act on it. that really fits in your value. At the end of the day, if you're doing something that's against your values, then that would trigger the guilt and the shame and whatnot. So again, you no judgment, removing the judgment from yourself and from other people, and not thinking about what other people think of you is so freeing. So kudos for opening up, and thanks for sharing.
All right, who's
Right.
next? I lost track.
We got Clark. Let's have, I think, ask me. It's not coming up. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
He had to let me go first. I couldn't unlock.
Oh, okay. There we go.
There. First off, I want to make a comment here on the roughhousing, etc. There. This is one that I grew up in a family, we roughhoused. We literally wrecked a couple chairs in the house wrestling with my dad because he would have one of us pulling on each arm, etc. There through the years on it. And I have watched, and I'm going to say probably 90% of the boys and probably 10 or 20% of the girls get some value from it there. And I don't think we need to kill it because there is value in it. There's skills that you learn control, etc. while you're roughhousing there.
That's
and
a good point.
Then the question I'm going to ask on top of this is, where is the line between porn addiction and desire with occasional failings, I guess is what you would say.
Desire with occasional failings is the human condition, to be honest. Unless I feel like you castrate yourself there, I think there always will be, kind of that, urge, and it's, peaks at certain times, when I'm, when I'm feeling lonely or, lazy, it comes at other times, whatnot. But the real, what I've seen, the real addiction is, I think it's a lot more understandable with substance and whatnot. Addiction comes from you actually cannot function without it. You see it a lot more with drugs and hard substances, where their appearance, their mannerisms, they a lot of times on drugs, they'll get jittery until they need something like that. With porn, it is a stimulation, that eventually it becomes a dependence on something, just as much it would be for food or air. And we throw the term addiction on porn use so much, just as a quick way to describe it, whereas we really need to say, you're going through a lot of habits and whatnot that are that are leading you to look at porn for a little bit, and then a little bit later you'll look at it again. And real quick, while we're on this, there's somebody else in the chat who's asking, but what are ways to help avoid it? What I had noticed going through the course is, like I said, there are, you can, try to take a step back and look at instances where you are particularly, tempted. Is it when it's, at the end of the day, it's late at night, I get on my phone, at the end of the day, there's a lot of, habits that, will build up, like kind of right before, we view it, or, do anything else that, bad habit that we don't want to do. So it's a matter of taking a look at what those are and trying to stop that. That's okay. Like, get up and, go for a walk or do something else, put your mind on something else, addressing those, and, being willing to, talk to other people who've had a similar experience. Like, I'm predispositioned to view it when X, Y, or Z, what have you done? We have so much focus of, oh, you're trying to quit smoking, do this, choose, change your clothes or whatnot. Like, some of the same principles apply.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
the reason for asking the question was one of the groups, there was a discussion of it, and I would have said what they were discussing was lust rather than porn addiction. They were treating the fact that you had human desire as an addiction, and I think they just gone too far.
Mislabeling.
I
Yeah, I
like
mean, addiction
I
is
like
when your life is disrupted. Like you find yourself
yeah.
looking at it at work, you find yourself stuck in traffic and looking at it in the car in traffic. I think
Mhm.
when you find it more and more having to like, it's almost like having to go out and have a cigarette. Like you've got to see that porn sometime during the day in weird, awkward times. I would say you've got a problem, you know?
Right. And I think these days too, we use the like a lot of terms loosely that we tend to label ourselves easily as addicts when really the question is, am I just turned on right now because I'm feeling hot and bothered? Or is it really an addiction that really this, as Corey said, that disrupts your basic way of life? So I think putting the labels right away, at least what I've noticed in our society these days, does not help because whatever we put in our minds is what we become. And again, you have to assess where you're at. Is this really a label that is concrete, that is based on, what is really happening in your life versus there is something else going on, not necessarily addiction right away. So yeah.
And
Yeah.
then with addiction, I'm seeing in the chat, Gary saying that, other addictions become so much more, visible. You are drinking, you are gambling. Whereas, you would see, viewing porn or having sex as not like that. Like, no, that much stimulation is not normal. So,
Yeah.
it very much fits with those other drugs and bad behaviors.
Perfect.
Well, thank you. Over and out.
Thanks, Clark.
Thanks,
So
Clark.
we have Lori next, and I think let's see, she's coming up.
Hi, Lori.
Lori, are you there?
Hi. I wasn't sure if there was something else going on.
Oh,
So I more just kind of have a comment, and then Scott, if you want to speak to some of that. First of all, echoing at what everybody else says, that it definitely takes a lot of courage to speak to this topic, and especially in our faith where it is such a taboo subject and people don't want to talk about it. Secondly is that I think that we can get under this false assumption that we as Mormons are isolated in that bubble. And there's actually a huge demographic for a lot of people that feel shame. I live in the Seattle area and there's a lot of people at Microsoft. They actually have groups at Microsoft for some of these kinds of things. And the anonymity piece of that is very, very vital for them. And so there's a lot of statistics. And so speaking to the people who are bringing up about women, that it's like basically 3 to 5% of our population deals with some form of sexual behavior addiction, which is a small percentage when you're speaking about the fact of what is just a desire, what is just in that moment, and what is actually addiction. And then to ride on that, 40% of those are women in our area, or just in the US. So yeah, it's a lot of, it's fairly equal for men and women in how we struggle with that. And that I think we can talk a lot to addiction and to behaviors, but when we start talking, kind of like what Clark was saying, when people start talking to, this is this demographic, right? This is this group, and this is what it looks like for you. That remembering that with any sort of substance abuse, taking that drink or taking that drug, especially once you have that's something that you abstain from for the rest of your life. But with sex, most people don't want to stop being sexual altogether, right? There is some piece of them that wants that and just has to find a healthier way to do that. And when I go and I research and I listen to these people, every person gets to make that decision for themselves of what is healthy sexual behavior and what is not. Because for some people, for them, masturbating is completely okay. For me, it's not. I get to make that choice, right? I get to make that say. So for me, it's like, okay, that for you isn't addictive. For me, if I have something that drives me to go and do that, then that is addictive for me. And so just being very, very careful of how we tell other people what they should see as addictive or not addictive, or it's all about just exploring our own inventory, our own behaviors, and seeing where that's problematic. Like you were saying, Corey, it's like, where does that disrupt my life? Where does that bring in a lot of that is, you know, what creates a barrier between my higher power and I, or in our case, God and I, and really looking at your life and your situation. And it's like, when we can't control that, but it's something that we want to stop, then that's when, you know, it could be something that's addictive. But go look into it, go research for yourself, and go and see where those areas for you need improvement. And so I really applaud you, Scott, on like, you know, realizing that for yourself, like, you know, that's where you were at, and, you know, that was an area of improvement for yourself on what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
one
And yeah,
last,
thank you for those comments. Yeah,
you're
sorry,
welcome.
go for it.
And one last thing, just because it was really, really funny, Corey, when you were going off on your thing about, you know, especially a single mom of 3 boys, and my youngest is 14. Literally, they were over there in my little hallway having a punching contest, and I yelled at them when you were doing that. And I'm like, oh my word, like I'm that mom.
Oh,
Like,
Like, okay, go back to punching each other. Have fun.
oh my gosh.
anyway,
That's awesome.
yeah. Thank you
Thank
again for the
you.
topic. That was great.
Thank you for your comments. Awesome.
Corey. Yeah, absolutely. So, do we have any
Can-
other, or
Can we get one more? I'm seeing Gary's in the chat with a lot of questions. Is he
Okay,
able to speak?
let's see.
Hey, Gary, you want to come on? Do you have any
Yeah.
questions? Oh, we got Mark up here.
Okay. Let's do unmute.
Gary
Hello,
Bueller.
Hey, Mark.
Bueller.
Mark. Can you hear
Yeah,
us?
my question, I'm just curious if Scott came across anything with other addictions like alcohol or drugs. You know, they can go ahead and be sober 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but you know, if they have a lapse, you know, it's like they get right back to that point where they stepped off. I was just curious, through the groups or anything that you heard, is it similar with, you know, porn or something of that nature, or you know, just curious, you know, because there is also the physical aspects
In
you know,
general, or as that happened to
maybe
me,
like
or
brain and drugs or anything. I'm just curious.
yes. I mean, speaking generally, it's, you know, about the same as any other addiction. But again, to have the healthy mindset of it, it kind of goes to, you know, with seeing porn or, you know, grabbing another drink or whatever it may be, you have to understand that, you know, life gets hard, and there will be situations that, you know, you can't prepare for, regardless of, you know, what happens. You know, that could be the same with, you know, a lot of other, you know, temptations and whatnot. But one thing that I had picked up from the LDS Family Services course was to have a matter of perspective. Was, you know, a lot of these things have happened, and that doesn't mean that, oh, you have failed, your 3 or 5 years of, you know, being sober are now out the window. That, you know, that's not what it means. It's, you know, this has happened. You recognize, okay, so, you know, this happened. You know, I don't feel great about it, but I'm not going to let all my hard work go to waste. I wasn't anticipating X, Y, or Z, or, you know, it was just not my day. So I can identify what has happened, and, you know, plan accordingly. Have I, you know, found it hard, you know, over the last, you know, couple of months, you know, since I've been basically sober? Heck yeah. But I can identify what those are, and I can, you know, I tried to stay away from those things. It happens just like any other temptation.
Mm-hmm. Just also like to, you know, thank you for the moral courage, and not only, you know, the physical courage to come out here and to talk about this topic, and be willing to do that. So, you know, some people automatically would have closed the door, hearing about this, but I appreciate you taking the courage.
Yeah, but yeah, it was definitely felt spiritually prompted to share. And then the book, was definitely eye-opening for me as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. So, yeah, Scott, we definitely thank you for coming on here. And I would definitely wholeheartedly sustain everything everybody said about you coming on, being brave. I personally think this is a very important topic. I would say, and I'm being conservative here, but I would say 20 to 25% of the population of the church suffers or has some issue with pornography. You're not the only one in the church. And I think you coming on to talk about this is so helpful. It's and I hope that you feel it in your heart that I would say 5 to 10 people just who watch this video are going to change their lives. They're going to get the help they need because of what you did. Coming on here and talking and giving them good ideas and counsel. And I hope that people go back and watch this video will say, man, that's a good book to read, or that's some good steps to take. And I hope that their lives change. And really appreciate you coming on here to share that. But I hope you feel like you're making a difference out there by coming on here and talking about it.
And I think that's also the goal of our podcast, is to have this tough conversation within our our LDS community. Whether you think we're so independent, but these are important discussions that needs to be had, so people who experience the same thing doesn't feel that they're alone. I think that's feeling that you're not able to reach out or get help is probably one of the most challenging, part of somebody's life when they go through something this challenging. And again, and I commend you for coming over and discussing this. We have a very busy chat tonight for sure.
I know.
So it's a good topic, interesting topic to talk about. And I applaud the audience as well for being open and willing to share. So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So this is the point in the podcast where we switch gears to more of a
more cash
after party. We stop the recordings, we stop the streams, and everybody comes on, and we just have a free flow of fun conversation. We call it the after party because it's not structured, and we just basically chit chat. So I will stop the recording.
Stop the recording.